A few days ago, there was a tweet put out by Retals saying, how is there still not a pathway for KSA guys to grow? Don't know how it's called a world championship with some of the best players in the world, Ahmad or Khalid, etc., don't get a chance to compete. It's really just obvious that these two guys are better than good enough to compete with Sam top 2, OCE top 2, and probably the bottom half of EU and NA. Either let them compete in EU or give them their own league. Yeah, maybe they lack depth, but you cannot tell me that if you give Ahmad the facilities in NAU, he wouldn't be one of the best players in the game. Should at least have a chance. Today's video, we're going to be breaking down this, talking about some of the behind the scenes insight when it comes to what goes into bringing in a new region into the scene, why it may not technically be possible, some of the hurdles as to why it may have been delayed, and ultimately my feelings about the whole topic. But before we get into that, as always, if you guys enjoy the content, thumbs up, hit subscribe, all that fun stuff. Well, let's get straight into the video. As I mentioned in the intro, there was a tweet that got some traction by Retals talking about how the Middle Eastern regions and the Asian regions and stuff don't have the ability or a path to play in the RLCS. And after we've seen what's happened primarily during the off season, where Incivik ended up helping fund and provide tournaments with the collaboration of a lot of EU tournament organizers, they gave a place for Sandrock Gaming to develop. If you guys don't know who Sandrock Gaming is, it is a Middle Eastern team based in Saudi Arabia, and Incivik is their owner and has been basically the sole funder into making sure that these guys have the opportunity to compete and play for a living. Khalid, Ahmad, all those guys, super talented 1v1 players, individually super talented in general. Incivik is basically taken upon himself to help the Middle Eastern region grow and expand and try to become part of the forefront of the Rocket League esports scene. And because of that, Sandrock Gaming, and there's a couple other names in there as well in the Middle Eastern scene, have come to the forefront. We even saw in the Asian region, and shout outs to APL as an organization who try to make this stuff happen in the off season. You saw players that are familiar names like Realize and his team come over and compete in DreamHack Montreal. So it's not that they don't have teams that are willing to come and compete. It's just there is no system for them to compete in. So we're going to try to break down and talk about the actual talking points of this, part of the reasons why it might be delayed, as well as what could happen in the future. So first thing up, obviously, I do think they're plenty talented. I don't think there's any disagreement in that. I feel 100% that the teams that are in these regions have plenty good talent. I've had the ability to play with players from even Japan, like Realize, and the guy's playing on 240 ping and still putting up some pretty dang good results. There's been talks of him moving over to OCE to compete with Hawk, the young player over there. But again, it's just not the same being able to compete in your region and kind of funnel that. And part of the complications come in with when you bring in a new region for the RLCS, Psyonix is essentially trying to delegate the work that goes into the production side. Obviously, they take full control over the RLCS with NA and EU, but for South America and OCE, they give it over to a trusted tournament organizer that over various events and over various tasks has shown that they are capable of running a league play based system, whether it be a different format or whatever it may be. In South America, that's Rocket Street, and in OCE, that's RL Oceania. They also tried ESL, and that kind of went poorly. So again, there is the delegation from Psyonix to basically say, like, we need you to be able to run an actual production with a studio and all that kind of stuff. And as of right now, we haven't seen any of those to break out of the Middle East or out of Japan. You do get tournaments here and there, but the foundation that needs to be created in order for this stuff to happen in the first place just really hasn't been solidified. I do think APL, the tournament organizer, could kind of take over that, as they showed during the offseason when Psyonix funded a bunch of community tournaments, mine included. Not only did you get to see some different organizers try to help out those regions, but overall, you also saw the level of competition that they brought. And this is where it becomes kind of confusing and why they don't allow the Middle Eastern teams to even compete in the first place. I don't know if it's a legal reason. I don't know what the limitations are besides that, but I don't know why Middle East isn't able to sign up and compete in Europe. Yes, they're going to have a ping disadvantage, but it's no different from US West having to queue US East. It's still like 80 plus ping at times, and the guys are willing to put up with it. They've done it plenty of time. It's how they primarily queue when they're actually playing the game as of right now. So I personally look at it, and I don't think there's really an excuse for the Middle Eastern teams to come in unless there is a legal precedent as to why they can't do it for labor laws or whatever the reason. I think that's the only thing that's hindering it. Now, if Psyonix feels that that region itself should have its own tournament system and everything else, then there needs to be an organizer that steps up, and there needs to be some way to push that And I don't know if Psyonix is already trying to do that behind the scenes. I do agree, as Johnny Boy does leave a reply saying that it would be awesome in the short term as kind of a band-aid to the situation to see a wildcard route added if it's too complicated to add a whole region. And I do agree with this. I love wildcards. I think this happens in a lot of different esports as well, where there is the standard path to getting in, but even though you can't run a consistent league over the course of time, you can run a one-off tournament over the course of a weekend or so and have all the teams in that region and have, say, someone like APL. Again, we get into the complication of being able to broadcast it and everything else, but you have those regions for a smaller prize pool, get the chance to send one representative to the actual World Championship. So instead of NA and EU sending 6 teams, maybe they both only send 5, and then you get one team from the Middle East, one team from Asia, and you still get your 16 teams at the World Championship. These are viable options, and I totally agree. I love wildcard spots. I like that kind of last-ditch effort of like, hey, we didn't qualify through these means, but we're really, really hot right now, and we have the ability to kind of make our way through. I love those storylines. They're really exciting when they actually happen in live events. You can get some really interesting results and some really fun underdog storylines, which to a viewer has always worked very well. So I do agree and have that same sentiment as Johnny about being able to possibly do a wild card if they can't sustain a long-term plan when it comes to the production. Now, I will say, and I did mention some of the hurdles that may have gotten in the way, and this is me just kind of trying to put the pieces together, but I do honestly believe that the pandemic has really put a delay on this, and not for the obvious reasons that market going down and delays and just not being able to travel, but in the sense of what was supposed to happen in the middle of 2020. For those that don't remember, Intel Extreme Masters, or IEM, was supposed to run a tournament in partnership with the Olympics in Tokyo. There was supposed to be a Japanese team representing, and then a bunch of teams based upon the region. Like, to my knowledge, they were allowing players like Turbo to compete with NRG, even though he's from Sweden. So the concept and that whole complication of, we have a group of 3, but now for numerous months, we're not allowed to compete with our actual team for the pro scene. And it created this issue with a lot of pros because there was only one tournament during the year for that reason, as compared to, and that's a whole different video and a whole different breakdown before I go kind of off a tangent on it. That event in itself was supposed to send representation from all over the world and do it in the region that wasn't the United States or Europe. It was supposed to be in a totally different country. For the first time ever, we were going to see something that wasn't NA or EU. It was going to be a big name tournament in somewhere that was a different region with different representation hosting it, and also with the announcement of the Olympics. It was supposed to be a $250,000 tournament in front of a bunch of eyes and really showcase the talent on a world level. It would have been the first true, in my opinion, world championship, if I'm being completely honest. Even though it is more of a World Cup format and you're not getting the dedicated teams, it is the most world-ish representation of international competition that Rocket League had ever seen, and a lot of us were really excited for it. I was supposed to go and cover it as a interviewer or something like that for ESPN Esports at one point. It was going to be a huge event, and there was going to be a ton of coverage and a lot of eyes on it that would have led to some really exciting things. So the fact that that didn't happen, I think they were planning, and their intentions were to do that event and then also release free-to-play and really showcase to the world, like, Rocket League is this awesome game. It's super accessible. Anybody can play it from any region, and now it's free. Anybody can go and really play it with no entry cost. You can just go and download it. So with it being on every platform, including Switch, and being free to play, and all the other changing situations with free to play, there was a lot of thought process behind what it felt like was going to be the Olympics happens. We now get the introduction of different regions. And it felt like that was supposed to be Japan's showcase. That was supposed to be the Middle East showcase. That was supposed to be the introduction to these other regions. And because it didn't happen due to the pandemic, we've had to delay that. That is pretty much where my brain has gotten to it. That is my speculation on the whole circumstance. But as an overall feeling to kind of wrap this up, I do personally believe that based upon what we've seen from Sandrock Gaming and others, because the region does have like 6 or 7 pretty solid teams in the Middle East. Asia, I'm a little less well-versed, other than knowing like Realize and the guys like Karma from Era and everything. And they've changed names, of course, over the years, but there doesn't feel as much depth from Asia. And even though they've done some LANs, and I've tuned in and talked to the chat to the best of my ability for some of those LANs, but it doesn't feel like an event that we're thinking about. It's like a bunch of people that are having a LAN in like a conference room, if that, or like a school room, and that's how they compete. And it's more like an after school thing than a tournament or a LAN like a DreamHack or whatever it may be. And that's not to, you know, throw shade by any means. It's just when you want to bring the attention, you need to have consistent results. And that's why OCE got brought in first. They constantly had tournaments going. They had a really good community fitting behind it. They had tournament organizers galore. They had casters. Like, the foundation was there. So all Sinex had to do is be like, here's some money, make it happen, hire your people. Cool. And South America did the same thing. And through constant hard work and dedications, you know, we got Rocket Street in the Grand Series. So that foundation needs to be had before they can really justify it. But I do agree with the wildcard option being a good idea. I do agree that it does not feel Worlds-esque when there's only 4 regions. You were talking, you're missing out on a lot of different talent. And maybe that'll change now that the player base has gone up like 500% with free-to-play. So it will be interesting to see on how this develops. But I'm wholeheartedly in agreement of why don't we have more regions in the RLCS? I do think a lot of that has to do with the pandemic. And maybe post-pandemic, when that stuff eventually clears up, whenever the heck that'll be, we will get to see more regions being involved. But for the most part, I can't imagine what it is like for Khaled and the rest of the guys. I remember when it was Scrub Killer and we found out like, hey, this guy's really good. He's got 2-3 years. He has to wait to play. I cannot imagine being of age, being fully capable, showing that you're good enough. But the only reason you can't play is because there's no way for you to compete. You would have to move and change your area of residence to even have a chance. And there was talks of that with Incivik. I think Incivik actually planned on moving the guys somewhere in Europe to give them a chance to run through. And now with an open qualifier, maybe post-pandemic, that's the play. But again, with these younger kids, and that's something that you always have to consider, the age group being 15 to get in is very difficult to just take them and uproot them and move them across the country or do something to give them that capability. It's a very young scene. There's a reason why a lot of tournaments and a lot of esports organizers do try to prefer an age of like 17 at the minimum. But again, there's a lot of complications that come with Rocket League as a whole, just because it does have a younger age demographic when it comes to the level of when you can start playing as a pro. So it will be interesting to see how this develops. I do like people using their platform, if they do have a bigger platform, to help advocate for this stuff. I'm a huge advocate of saying that if you have a platform or you have the ability to talk about something that matters, you should do so. So in this case, I'm fully behind Retals. I do agree. I think more people should be vocal about it, and that push should happen. I hope these conversations are happening behind the scenes, and if they are not, Psyonix, please do them, because I think you guys are missing out on what we consider the best competition in Rocket League esports. That's going to wrap it up for me. If you guys have any questions, comments, concerns, as always, drop those in the comments down below. And I'll catch you next time. Peace.